Hello and welcome to this special presentation on GLPs. This is an objective overview of America's trending weight health approach. And what we're looking to do here is understand weight loss medications without losing sight of our health. My name is Lisa Schneck. I am a certified nutrition coach and fitness trainer, and this presentation is educational in nature. It reflects publicly available research. As I stated, I am a nutrition coach and personal trainer, not a physician nor a pharmacist. Nothing here constitutes medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider for guidance specific to your health situation. And so, where we begin is just looking at why weight loss can feel so difficult for so many. So, if you're one of those who have struggled with your weight for years, perhaps decades, you're not alone. And it's not a personal failing. Obesity is a complex medical condition and it's shaped by biology, hormones, brain chemistry, stress, sleep, environment, in our modern food landscape. Hunger is not a weakness, it's a powerful biological signal and it's designed to keep us alive. And so, first, we'll look at our hormones. So, our hunger and fullness, this is regulated by three hormones in particular: ghrelin, leptin, and insulin. These are largely outside of your conscious control. Additionally, we have brain pathways. So there are reward circuits in the brain that simply respond positively to highly palatable foods. And this is in ways that can really override willpower. And then third is our environment. So our modern food environments, they are, it's convenient. There is advertising there that research has clearly shown impacts how much of a product people will consume. We have these large portion sizes. And furthermore, foods are engineered in a way to increase their consumption. So all of this can kind of work together in a way that can make it seem as if you really don't have a choice. So if you've ever felt like your appetite had a mind of its own, right, and it was winning, that's what you're experiencing. So let's meet GLP-1. This is your body's own appetite hormone. We all have GLP-1 within us already. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, a hormone your body naturally produces in the small intestine after eating. It's part of your body's built-in system for managing blood sugar and signaling that you've had enough. So what the GLP-1 does naturally is it signals the brain that you're full. It slows the rate at which your stomach empties. It stimulates insulin release in response to meals. It reduces inappropriate glucagon release after meals, helping to improve blood sugar regulation. And it reduces appetite between meals. And so essentially, you eat the food, the GLP-1 is released, and now the brain has a signal that it's full. You can think of GLP-1 as your body's natural, I've had enough messenger. GLP-1 medications work by mimicking and extending this signal. Now, before we go further, I want to introduce GIP. This is another hormone working behind the scenes. GIP stands for glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. Like GLP-1, it is released from the small intestine after eating, and GIP helps to stimulate insulin release, support blood sugar regulation, signal energy availability, and influence your appetite and your metabolism. By itself, GIP was once uncertain for weight management. However, together with GLP-1, we find that it may enhance weight loss and metabolic benefits. So you can think of GLP-1s as one appetite signal and GIP as a complementary signal. Together, they may create a stronger effect than either one alone. And so your GLP-1 is increasing fullness, it's slowing the stomach emptying, it's reducing your appetite, and it's improving blood sugar control. Meanwhile, GIP supports insulin response, influences energy balance, enhances metabolic signaling, and it works alongside your GLP 1. So, scientists are learning that these hormones work more like teammates than competitors. And so, when we look at what today's weight loss medications are actually doing, the GLP 1 receptor agonists are mimicking your body's own GLP 1 hormone, but it's lasting much longer. So instead of minutes, they work for days. That sustained effect helps to control appetite, blood sugar, and digestion. So when we look at Wegovy and Ozempic, so those are sort of our first generation GLP-1s, and that's specifically what they worked on, was mimicking the GLP-1 that we all have naturally. We now have sort of a newer generation of weight loss medications, Zepbound and Mounjaro among them. And here we're looking at the tirzepatide. It is mimicking both GLP 1 and GIP. This produces the greatest average weight loss outcomes among approved obesity medications. The key effects: it's reducing hunger, it's quieting cravings, it's increasing fullness, it slows stomach emptying, and it improves blood glucose or blood sugar control. So let's talk about food noise. One of the most life-changing effects reported by people using GLP-1 medications is the silencing of what's called food noise, the persistent, intrusive mental chatter about foods, cravings, and eating that occupies the mind throughout the day. For many people who have struggled with weight, this internal negotiation has been a constant companion for decades. And so, what we might hear from someone who is using the GLP, GIPs, I finally stopped thinking about food all day. It's like someone turned down the volume. Or I can walk past snacks without negotiating with myself. That never happened before. How many of you have experienced food noise, that constant mental conversation with food? How much mental energy has it cost you? Well, this is exactly why GLP 1s are so effective. While there is a common misconception that GLP 1 medications burn fat or they speed up the metabolism, they don't actually do either of those directly. Their power lies in something more subtle and more profound. These medications reduce the biological resistance to eating less. They make smaller portions feel satisfying. They quiet the hunger signals that have sabotaged so many past attempts. They level the playing field between your intentions and your biology. So eating less becomes easier. A comfortable caloric deficit is created naturally. Blood sugar stabilizes, and this reduces energy crashes and cravings. And it's taking away that mental burden of dieting, which is it's just significantly released or reduced. GLP-1 medications do not change your choices, though. They change the biological environment in which you make them. That is a meaningful and important distinction. What these medications are essentially providing to you is a window of opportunity. So if you have struggled because of a large amount of fat tissue, which sends out, it essentially leads to the signals that you are hungry almost regardless of what you eat. That is in addition to the more psychological sort of rumination over food. So, for example, during the live presentation of this information, somebody described eating breakfast and thinking about what they're going to eat for lunch. And this particular person has been taking GLPs, and they said that it's made a huge difference. They're not thinking about food all the time. So when you can end that constant rumination about food, you get a window of opportunity. And what you do in that window of opportunity is the most important thing. We know that in order, as we get older especially, that in order to live, as long as possible, as well as possible. There are levers that we really want to pull. We want to put nutrient dense foods into our body. We want to move our body. We want to protect our sleep and rest. We want to protect our mindset. And we want to have connection with others. I've talked about those things with you all now for a few years. Those are our 5 wellness superpowers. So, whether or not you're on the medication, those things do not become unimportant. One could argue they become more important because a person who is taking the medication is going to be losing weight rapidly. It's going to be quite possible that they're going to lose a lot of muscle rapidly and burn through a lot of nutrients rapidly. And if they're not putting this stuff back in, if they're not triggering an adaptation in the muscles through strength building exercises, at the end of the day, they're not going to be healthier. They may be smaller, but they're not going to be healthier. And there's a big difference between the two. So the core message of this entire presentation is that GLP-1 medications are extraordinary tools, but tools require a skilled hand to produce lasting results. The reduction in hunger and food noise opens that window of opportunity that so many people have never had before. What you build during that window determines your long-term health. So we absolutely want to be sure that we are building strength and building muscle mass. And the way that you do those, you have to resistance train. You have to ask your body to do more than it typically does. You have to trigger an adaptation. So whether that's by going to a class, a strength building class, or using your own knowledge in the gym, or having someone show you how to use the circuit machines in a gym. There are a lot of different approaches. Some are better than others. At the end of the day, you want to take this opportunity when that food noise is calmed, when you have that window of opportunity, to make sure you're getting 2 resistance sessions per week at minimum. Doesn't have to be terrible, doesn't have to last for hours, right? There's really wonderful ways to approach this where you will feel good, you will feel better with your first workout, right? And from there, we have to improve the nutrition. The lean meats, right? The lean proteins, the chicken, the fish, the turkey, even a steak, right? Even a pork chop. You have to get that protein in, right? In addition to that, plant foods, the fruits and the vegetables, all the different colors. It's very important. It's important to your gut health. It's important in many ways. But essentially, when we're looking at these proteins and we're looking at this plant food, what this is everything that your body is built from and your systems run on. And so if you're not consuming this food, you can't possibly have systems that run well and have muscle and all of the other amazing things that protein does for you. We just need to do this. And again, it's not really complicated. It honestly is not. Come and join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. every week. This is what we talk about during that hour that we're all together in the Weight Health Group support. Third, we want to gain mobility. So now that the weight is melting away, so to speak, right? So you have less weight on your joints. You feel less uncomfortable. You now have the opportunity to move your body in ways that perhaps you never have before. When we move a joint through its full range of motion, there are many things that we're doing. One thing, we are nourishing that joint. The second thing, we're taking that synovial fluid that's in there. We're lubricating that joint, the physical health of the joint. Additionally, when you move your joint through its full range of motion, your central nervous system has already decided where you're safe and where it doesn't believe you're safe. and where it believes that you are safe is to move that joint through its range of motion only as much as you typically do. So when you go to do an arm circle, for example, and you notice that you don't have a great range of motion, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have mechanical damage, right? And it's not just because you're quote unquote getting older. It's because that is what your central nervous system has become comfortable with. How do you change it? Well, you do just a little bit more each time. Your central nervous system learns that that was safe and it will kind of reset. So we want to test that all the time. And finally, sleeping better. Weight loss and reduced inflammation will often improve your sleep quality, and this further supports metabolic health. Make sure that you're getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night for men, getting closer to 9 hours per night for women. That sleep is very powerful. Now, as much as I want to go into all of the information about nutrition and about mobility and about sleep and about brain health, I can't, because no one will want to watch this if it's a 3 hour presentation. I do have all of the other presentations on video, though. So if there's anything that you would like to see more of, you just reach out to me and I will send that information to you. And so we want to use that window of opportunity wisely. The medication is helping to create the conditions. You decide what to build with them. So here's the distinction that separates short-term weight loss from long-term health transformations. So the medication creates less hunger, fewer cravings, quieter food noise, easier portion control without suffering, more stable blood sugar and energy levels, and mental space that was previously occupied by food thoughts. What you can build with that space: muscle mass and functional strength. At no point do you lose the ability to add muscle mass and to add functional strength. Better eating habits and food literacy. Just being aware of how foods impact your physiology can influence your decisions. A consistent movement routine that you enjoy. Improved and more restorative sleep, emotional resilience around food, and sustainable routines that outlast the medication. The goal is to use this window to build a lifestyle that supports your health, you at your best, with or without medication long term. Weight loss is not the same as health gain. Two people can lose the same amount of weight and arrive in very different places. The number on the scale tells only part of the story. So consider these two scenarios, both real possibilities for people using GLP-1 medications. Person A, 40 pounds lost. They eat less of the same processed foods they always ate. They have lower protein intake throughout, no strength training or resistance exercise, largely a sedentary lifestyle. They lost weight, and that weight included a significant amount of muscle mass. Then we have person B, 40 pounds lost. Over that time, they have prioritized protein at every meal. They eat mostly whole, nutrient dense foods. Doesn't mean that they can't have a piece of chocolate cake. They eat mostly whole, nutrient dense foods. They are strength training 2 to 3 times per week. They are walking daily. Doesn't have to be one foot in front of another, just consistently move throughout the day. They are more likely to preserve muscle and lose a higher proportion of fat. Both lost 40 pounds. Will their futures look the same? Their strength, independence, metabolism, and long-term health outcomes will likely be very different. And so this is what we want to look at. Which person are you choosing to be? So protein becomes really a priority. When appetite decreases on GLP-1 medications, the protein intake often drops first, and that's the problem. Protein is not just for athletes. As we age, it becomes one of the most critical nutrients for maintaining independence, strength, and metabolic health. And if you've been to any of my presentations, you've heard me talk about protein. Protein is your bone matrix, your hair, skin, nails, your muscle, obviously, your immune system, neurotransmitters, enzymes. Every single component of you has got protein involved. So, from the bone matrix all the way to your hair and fingernails. Well, protein, we get that from lean meats, from Greek yogurt, from cottage cheese, from other cheeses, although there's some fat involved there. Protein is extremely important. When you're on the GLP-1, the protein is one of the nutrients that is the least palatable because you already have slow gastric emptying, which protein increases, right? You're not as hungry for foods as you've been before. So to look at a chicken breast or even a protein shake or some cottage cheese with fruit, it's not necessarily going to be appetizing to you, but it's super important that you get that protein in. So protein is the building block of your muscle tissue. Protein supports tissue repair, immune response, and recovery from exercise or illness. And hundreds of hormones and enzymes that regulate your body are made from protein, including those that manage blood sugar. And finally, for independence, preserving muscle as we age is directly linked to mobility, balance, fall prevention, and functional independence. When you're eating less, every bite becomes more valuable. Make protein the priority. So, for example, you get up for breakfast. Please don't do oatmeal and toast. I would rather you did maybe eggs and toast or whatever you want. Each meal, you want to have that protein. We're looking to get about 20 to 30 grams of the protein. We are looking in a given day. If you're on this weight health medication, I'd say 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. But who are you going to talk to about this? Your healthcare provider. Okay. Moving on from there, we're going to look at whole foods versus processed foods. And as we look at that, we could just as easily say good foods and bad foods, right? Whole foods and processed foods. Well, I don't see it quite that way. What we do know is that a whole food has been minimally processed. Very few hands have touched it. So if we get a chicken breast, has it been processed? Yes, it has, because it's not a whole chicken, right? It doesn't have the feathers in it. So the more that a food has been processed, the difference between that whole chicken and a chicken nugget, for example, a lot of processing. And as the food is processed, usually other ingredients are being thrown in, and the very nutrient dense portion of it is being compromised. And so it is a relatively simple way to approach eating, to think, well, I want all whole foods. But there are processed foods out there that are perfectly fine for you to get. So, beans in a can, for example, if for any reason, you want the beans and you don't want to have to rinse them and cook them, the beans in the can is perfectly fine. Canned foods are perfectly fine. Additionally, when we look at protein shakes or nutrition shakes, those are not just processed foods. Those are ultra processed foods. They've been heavily processed. However, they're very good for you. And so there's always going to be some give or take there. There's going to be, you might have one thing that's working for you ideally. And in this case, it would be a beverage that's going to give you 30 grams of fantastic quality protein. You can drink it in just a few minutes. It's really going to help you get that protein in. It's going to help you get the protein in when your digestion is slow. You're not necessarily comfortable in the stomach. You're not really hungry, let's say, for protein dense foods, right? So whole versus processed is not simply good versus evil. There's a lot of nuance in there. What we're looking for is highly satisfying and nutrient dense, right? So fish, chicken, lean meats, Greek yogurt, and I say Greek yogurt because unlike, say, Yoplait regular yogurt, Greek yogurt has just about as much protein in it as a small chicken breast. And that's pretty good for something that tastes as delicious as Greek yogurt. So, Greek yogurt and eggs, beans and legumes, fresh fruits and vegetables, even whole grains. These foods are difficult to overeat. They fill you up before you consume excess calories. And in regard to four of those, so the Greek yogurt, the beans and legumes, the fresh fruit, the whole grains, I should say the plant foods, right, and the yogurt. These are also excellent for your gut health. So you have within your gut trillions of bacteria. These bacteria have a huge impact on your physiology. Some researchers even say it affects your mood, it affects your personality. It's very important that you are feeding the bacteria in your gut what they need. And what they need is the fiber from those plant foods. So the bacteria in your gut, those are called probiotics. The fiber in the food that you eat, those are prebiotics. When you are getting a diverse array of different plant foods, you are feeding what can sometimes be even latent bacteria, right? Those healthy bacteria that just have not had a good environment for a while. You can bring those guys to life. And the byproduct of that probiotics, ingesting the prebiotics, is very good for you. So many of the original Weight Watchers 0 Point foods, they share this common profile. They're highly satisfying. They have high nutrient density. They're naturally self-limiting. This wasn't accidental. It was based on the same satiety science we're discussing today. The same principles apply here. Build your smaller portions around these foods. And next, we're going to look at why muscle matters, especially now. Rapid weight loss, whether from medication, surgery, or aggressive dieting, carries a significant risk. Muscle loss alongside fat loss. Adults can lose 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade after age 30 anyway. And with these losses accelerating in later life, this is a process called sarcopenia, it can just be disastrous for us. Weight loss without resistance training can accelerate this decline significantly. So I'll tell you, when you're doing that resistance exercise, let's just say it's a bicep curl. When you do that bicep curl with a weight, if you're just starting out, a weight, you can only execute that bicep curl 12 times. When you do that, you are sending signals to your brain, to your body, that that muscle needs to stay. So simply by activating the muscle, it's one way for us to preserve it. The body realizes it can't give up the proteins, the amino acids in this muscle. Rather, I'm going to go and I'm going to use the fat instead. All right. So we're looking for 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight daily, and that's ideal body weight. So whatever your ideal weight is, not the weight that you may currently be. You're going to distribute this across your meals. You're going to resistance train regularly, even 2 sessions per week, light to moderate resistance. This signals the body to preserve and build muscle. Chair exercises count, bands count, water aerobics counts. You want to stay consistently active. Daily walking, light activity, avoiding prolonged sitting. These all contribute to muscle preservation and metabolic health. The goal is not simply to become lighter. The goal is to become stronger, more capable, and more independent. So what about side effects? GLP-1 medications are generally well tolerated, but like all medications, they come with potential side effects. Most are gastrointestinal and often improve as the body adjusts, typically over the first few weeks or months. Starting at a low dose and increasing gradually is the standard approach to minimizing discomfort. So common side effects, nausea, especially early on or after a dose adjustment, constipation. So again, we got to stay hydrated. Those probiotics and prebiotics help. and staying active. Fatigue, particularly in the early weeks, acid reflux or heartburn, decreased appetite, often the intended effect, and less common but worth exploring gallbladder issues. So, this risk will increase with rapid weight loss. Pancreatitis, this is rare, but requires prompt attention. Severe GI symptoms, these should be reported to your provider immediately. Of course, that muscle loss, well mitigated by protein intake and exercise. Always work closely with your healthcare provider. Report new or worsening symptoms promptly. Never adjust your dose without medical guidance. This is general educational information. Your prescribing provider is your source for medical guidance on these side effects. And the part that sometimes we don't hear much about, why weight loss often slows, what we would call the plateau, even on GLP-1s. So most people using GLP-1 medications will experience their most significant weight loss in the first 6 to 12 months. And then that progress will often level off around 12 to 18 months. This is normal, it's expected, it's not a sign of failure. The body is an adaptive system. So, one reason why this happens is just simply that you have a lower body weight. So, when the body has a lot of fat tissue, it's going to burn through that fat a lot more quickly. And then, as your pool of, let's say, energy to pull from has become less substantial, then the body is not quite so eager to part with it. The other part is that your metabolism will adapt also. So if you ask your body to do what you need it to do on significantly lower calories than what you really need, it will begin to become incredibly efficient. And what that means is that your metabolism can seem to slow. You know, it's again completely expected whenever you're losing a large amount of weight in this way and using it rapidly in this way. And then from the medication itself, there are reports of effects, particularly the gastric emptying, that effect from the medication will lessen over time. And so some folks will go to their provider and have their dosage increased. I would argue that to continue building your muscle, working on your lifestyle, those could very well prevent you from having to increase the dosage at all. So, does the medication stop working? This is one of the most common questions, and the answer is nuanced. The research tells a balanced story. Gastric emptying effects may lessen as the body adapts. Active weight loss typically slows after 12 to 18 months. Some people require dose adjustments over time. Weight gain is common if the medication is stopped without the lifestyle support. The balanced perspective. Many people continue to benefit long after active loss stops. Blood sugar control often remains improved. Appetite suppression frequently continues at a meaningful level, and cardiovascular benefits have been demonstrated independently. I want you to stick around toward the end of this presentation because I'm going to talk about some other things that I found in the research, as well as give you references for additional reading regarding GLP-1's impact on dementia and addiction. So this is interesting new stuff. Let's move on now to costs and coverages in 2025, 2026. There's not a whole lot I can say along these lines because it's changing so rapidly. You're just going to have to talk to your insurance provider, your medical provider, but there are some things that we can say along these lines. So the cost has been one of the most significant barriers to GLP-1 medications. The landscape is shifting, but variability remains high. Here's the current picture. So number one, reduced pricing. Manufacturer programs and pharmacy partnerships have brought list prices down in some markets. We have now cash pay programs. So some providers offer compounded versions or cash pay programs that significantly lower monthly cost, though availability and regulation vary. Insurance variability, so commercial insurance coverage varies widely. Many plans cover for type 2 diabetes, but not obesity alone. Always check your specific plan. And then the Medicare Part D coverage for weight loss indications is evolving. Recent legislative changes have broadened potential access. Discuss this with your provider. Who might benefit most? GLP-1 medications are not for everyone, but they have demonstrated meaningful benefit for a specific population. If you recognize yourself in one or more of these categories, a conversation with your physician is worthwhile. So a BMI over 30, FDA approved indication for weight management with lifestyle interventions. Overweight with health risk, so a BMI of 27 or over, including high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, or cardiovascular risk factors. Prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. There's strong evidence for blood sugar improvement with some medications, FDA approved specifically for type 2 diabetes management. Cardiovascular risk, semaglutide has demonstrated cardiovascular risk reduction independent of weight loss in high risk populations, and then repeated unsuccessful attempts. So, if biology has consistently overpowered your best efforts, medication may address the underlying physiological resistance. So, who should think more clearly? GLP-1 medications are powerful tools. And like all powerful tools, they work best in the right hands with the right expectations. Honest self reflection before starting is essential for long term success. So, number one, if we have unrealistic expectations, so expecting the medication to do all the work without lifestyle engagement is often going to lead to disappointment and weight regain. The tool amplifies the opportunity, it doesn't replace the effort. An unwillingness to address nutrition, eating less of the wrong foods produces a lighter load, but not necessarily a healthier body. Nutrition quality matters, especially with reduced volume. So if you're taking in fewer calories, we need more nutrition associated with those calories. An unwillingness to move more. Without physical activity, muscle loss accelerates for all of us. Metabolic adaptation is more pronounced. Even gentle, consistent movement makes a significant difference. And finally, unaddressed emotional eating concerns. So, if food serves primarily as comfort, stress relief, emotional regulation, or even stimulation, medication alone will not address the root pattern. Behavioral support is an important complement. This is not a judgment, it's a guide to maximizing success. The more honestly we prepare, the better the outcomes. And so the real goal is, who are you becoming? The scale measures weight, does not measure strength, vitality, confidence, independence, or joy. The most important question to ask yourself is not how much weight can I lose? It is who am I becoming while I lose it? Are you building muscle or losing it? Are you eating foods that nourish your body? Are you moving in ways that feel good? Are you sleeping better? Are you more confident and more capable? A person who is stronger, more active, more nourished, more confident than they were before, regardless of whether they stay on medication forever. That's the goal, and that's the real win. So, our key takeaways: let these principles guide your journey, whether you are currently using a GLP-1 medication, considering it, or simply learning today. Number one, tools, not magic. GLP-1s are powerful tools that reduce biological resistance. They create the conditions for success. You provide the effort and the intention. Protein first. When you eat less, make every bite count. Prioritize protein to preserve muscle and support every system in your body. Muscle matters. Strength training, even gentle resistance work is non-negotiable. Protect the muscles you have and build more. And again, this does not have to be a terrible experience. It can be really fun. Whole foods win. Nutrient dense, minimally processed foods deliver more nutrition per calorie, exactly what you need when eating less. Movement is medicine. Consistent daily activity, walking, stretching, strength work, these all compound over time and they will transform your health outcomes. Use the window. Within the window, build habits that will serve you long after any medication. Sustainable routines are the lasting prize. GLP-1 may reduce the quantity of the food you eat. You still get to choose the quality. Use this window of opportunity to build a stronger, healthier, more capable future. One meal, one workout, and one good night's sleep at a time. And now I just want to get into a little bit more of the interesting things I learned as I was preparing this presentation. I'm going to run through this really quickly. We're not gonna be here for long, but I want you to go ahead and look into this research on your own and see how amazing this is. GLP-1s and brain health. So I already know, I've already shared with many of you that Alzheimer's is now being referred to as type 3 diabetes, right? A lot to do with blood sugar. Emerging real world and clinical evidence suggest GLP-1 receptor agonists may offer meaningful neuroprotective effects, particularly in reducing the risk of dementia. The picture is promising, but it's nuanced. And right there, you've got study information. That's what that is, a retrospective cohort study of 82,000. This is for you to review. I'm going to send these slides along with this presentation. However, you can also just pause on there. Additionally, here in just a few slides where I have my references, it's essentially a bibliography. It's my citations. I have two sets, one for the larger presentation and then one specifically in regard to neuroprotection and addiction. GLP-1s and addiction, silencing the reward circuit. Preclinical models, epidemiological data, and early clinical trials converge on a striking finding. GLP-1 receptor agonists appear to reduce cravings and substance use disorders across multiple addictive substances, not just one. And again, this is here on these slides, this is actually citation information. So feel free to look at that. You can do a little research on your own. Finally, here at the end, these are your references for the overall presentation. Each slide that needed it had a number there where you would find this information with your deeper reading. And then in regard to the neuroprotection and addiction, there are some references for you there as well. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this presentation. I've had a wonderful time, and I will see or speak with you soon.